Today, we are going to take a look at the top 10 teams post the 2023 NFL Draft. I know that none of these teams have taken a snap yet. Wait a minute. Nobody knows who's going to be good or bad. This means that I could put the Packers in the top 10. And no one could say I was wrong. Because nobody has any idea. This could be my villain arc. This is my heel turn. I can make the Packers immortal. Yeah, but they're not on it. Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom, because I haven't done enough draft content, Grossi, and today, well, I already told you what we're doing in the intro. I wanted to take a look because we haven't done a top 10 power rankings since, January. It's been quite some time, and I was going to do one for free agency, but it was kind of a weird free agency, so instead I just waited until after the draft, and so now, post-draft, I want to take a look at who I think the top 10 teams are heading into this season. And before we get to that, I want to do some honorable mentions here because your teams are not going to be in the top 10, but I don't want everyone getting upset. There are 3 teams that I think are right there on the cusp. I have some questions with them, but I wanted to give them a shout out. Those 3 teams being the LA Chargers. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do this year. I don't like the fact that they are probably going to lose Austin Eckler. That's kind of a big for me. But the fact that Lombardi's not there anymore, they drafted a big-bodied wide receiver in the first round in Quentin Johnston. I like that pick a lot. I'm hoping that Justin Herbert will not just be relegated to doing check down routes on almost every single snap because that got real boring to watch. And I think Justin Herbert's more talented than that. So there is a big question on what that offense is going to look like, but I do like the Chargers for this upcoming season. That again, I say that just about every year. And well, Chargers fans, you know. In addition, I wanted to mention the Miami Dolphins as an honorable mention. Though they didn't have a lot of draft picks, only 4. I do like the bulk of their team. But they also swung big and got Jalen Ramsey. Now, I know they addressed secondary in the draft as well. So I think that defense should be pretty good. It's all going to come down to the health of Tua. I like their offense. I like how it's built. It's built with speed. But it all comes down to if their quarterback is healthy. And if he is, I think the Dolphins should be good this year. And finally, the last honorable mention team, I do want to mention the Detroit Lions because I don't like it, but I admire, no, I don't know, it's too complimentary. The Lions are doing things that some would see as beneficial. Yes, and I know that their draft was a little bit wonky, but I think even if you just reorder their draft picks, where they got Brian Branch, who was potentially a first-round talent, I think that they drafted pretty well. They drafted with specific roles in mind for these guys. They drafted for need as well, and I think in a weak division and a weak conference, they could do pretty well. And so, after all that blabbering, let's jump into the top 10. At number 10, I got the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, the Seattle Seahawks drafted amazingly. A shock to absolutely nobody. They just keep getting away with it. Getting the best corner and arguably the best wide receiver in the draft. They got Witherspoon, they got JSN, so Geno Smith is going to have plenty of targets to throw to. On top of that, they're trying to make that defense a little bit better because that first stretch last season was not good. But I like the team and the roster that the Seahawks are building. They're going to have a power run game. They drafted yet another running back in the second round. You have Kenneth Walker, of course. You have all these wide receivers to throw to. And then you have Geno Smith. Now, Geno Smith surprised a lot of people. The Seahawks surprised a lot of people last year, doing much better than many anticipated. And I think that Geno Smith is going to be a good quarterback this season. On top of that, they're in a division where the Cardinals and the Rams are not looking so hot right now, so they should be able to do pretty well. On top of that, the 49ers, they have some QB concerns. So the Seahawks, I think, are going to be a solid team this year with the potential to be good and or great because they're in a weaker division, they're in a weaker conference, and if their defense is able to take it up a few notches, they could be a powerhouse. Then at number 9, you got another upstart team who surprised a lot of people last year. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, they had like a quietly really good, solid draft. Nothing that was mind-blowing or shocking or made a big splash, but they're protecting Trevor Lawrence. They addressed offense with their first 3 picks, and I know that there's some big splashes being made in the AFC South, particularly looking at you quarterbacks, but they're still in one of the worst divisions in football. The Jaguars are a well-coached team. You saw how important coaching was last year, and Trevor Lawrence going into his 3rd year should be even better. So I like the Jaguars this year. I think their offense is going to continue to do really well. I love that they addressed offensive line because that was a weak point of their team last year. Now let's just see if they can put it all together. Then at number 8, you got the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys bringing in some big names during free agency. You have Stephon Gilmore, who, while older and was dealing with injuries, was really good for the Colts last year. And then you have Brandon Cooks, who is a constantly underrated wide receiver because he's been on teams like the Texans, but he has some really, really nice speed. CeeDee Lamb was basically their entire offense last year. And with Ezekiel Elliott leaving, though the door is not completely closed on him, I'm curious to see what this iteration of the Cowboys offense is going to look like. Kellen Moore is no longer with them. Instead, they got Brian Schottenheimer, so we'll kind of see what kind of form they take on. They should be a balanced team with a good run game with Tony Pollard, but they can also air it out. But the reason why the Cowboys are in my top 10 is because of that defense. Their defense already has some amazing pass rushers, but getting Mozzie Smith in the first round to make that run defense a bit better, I love that, because if that defense can be consistent week in and week out, they are going to win a lot of football games. They have an offense that has a lot of potential. You do have to wonder about coaching. Is Mike McCarthy the guy to get them over the hump? But again, in a weak conference in the NFC, the Cowboys should be able to do some damage. The thing is, are they going to humiliate themselves on the last play in the playoffs for a 3rd year in a row? Then number 7, you got the Baltimore Ravens. Well, a few weeks ago, I wouldn't be saying this, but the Ravens, they got Lamar Jackson, they got OBJ, they drafted Zay Flowers, and then they were like, all right, now we're going defense. But they got a trio of pass catchers and Rashad Bateman, OBJ, if he's healthy, of course, and Zay Flowers. Oh yeah, and they also have Mark Andrews. They got Roquan Smith last year. I know they didn't pick up Patrick Queen's 5th-year option, but that defense should still be really good. The run game, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. Is this the year where the Ravens are finally going to be healthy? Because I feel every year they have all this potential and then injuries completely destroy them. The other reason why I think the Ravens are going to be good is because Greg Roman is gone. Ravens fans have been calling for his head for years, and now you got what you wanted. We'll see how much of an issue Greg Roman really was. We'll kind of see if everyone can stay healthy. And if that is the case, the Ravens could be a really, really good football team this year. Number 6, there's question marks, but the defense is just so good. You got the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers, they are arguably the 2nd best team in the NFC, and that's with questions at quarterback. They were talking about trading Trey Lance, but that didn't happen during the draft. Brock Purdy, we don't know when he's going to return from injury. Just have to wait on that one. And so we don't even know who's going to be there behind center, but I think the 49ers have proven that it really doesn't matter as long as they are decently efficient. They have so many skill players around them, they'll be able to do well. That defense, especially that defensive front, should still be really, really good. Now, you do have some concerns at O-line. McGlinchey is gone, but overall, as I made the same exact argument with the Seahawks, they're in a weaker division, they're in a weaker conference, and so because of that, the 49ers are just built as a good football team because they're a well-run team, they're a well-drafted team, and so even though they're picking kickers in the 3rd round, they're still going to be good. Then getting into the top 5, here's my maybe super optimistic pick. I got the New Jersey Jets, that's right. I'm not giving you New York yet. You thought you could just waltz in here and take my quarterback and you get the moniker New York Jets? No. Until you prove yourself, you're going to be the New Jersey Jets. Plus, your stadium is there. But the Jets, taking a little bit of a big swing in getting Aaron frackin' Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers. And automatically, that is going to make their team significantly better than it was last year. Aaron Rodgers, even with a broken thumb, was much better than what they had in Zach Wilson. And sorry to the legend, now Dolphins legend, Mike White. But Aaron Rodgers is going to elevate that team. That offensive line, of course, needs to get a little bit healthier. Breece Hall, his health. You hope that he comes back. And if he is able to return to form, that offense is going to be really, really good. But of course, the star of the show, I think, is still going to be the defense. They go out and get McDonald. I know some fans were not happy about that. I love that. They have so much depth at edge rusher, and they could just get after the quarterback. If their defense is anywhere where it was last year, and then you bring in Aaron Rodgers, this team is already going to be a contender. So I know that it's a little bit optimistic and it's getting a little ahead of myself, but right now I see the Jets as a potential top 5 team. Now they just have to go out and prove it. Then number 4, you got the Buffalo Bills. The Bills making some splashes in the draft. Of course, free agency, they lost Edmonds, but they were able to keep guys like Poyer, so I like that a lot. But going after Dalton Kincaid and then also addressing the protection of Josh Allen, which is what they really should do, and Osiris Torrance, the best guard in the draft from Florida, I like that a lot. Dalton Kincaid, I am cautiously optimistic. Bills fans, I wouldn't get too overhyped about this season unless maybe later in the year as he continues to develop, because you usually don't see that kind of return from first-year tight ends. It usually takes them a year or two to get fully adjusted into the NFL, but the Bills are a good football team. They got decimated by injuries last year. So much happened to their team that just... there was a lot going on, and I think the Bills, with a fresh reset, Von Miller hopefully getting healthy, should be able to attack the AFC and get back to where they were. Now, of course, it's can you get over the hump? Because the Bills seem like the team of, hey, they're the team of destiny. They're right there. They just need a little bit more. Last year, they went out, they got Von Miller, they were Super Bowl favorites, and then it kind of just fell apart. I think while signing Latavius Murray is not a bad thing, they need a commitment to the run game. They can't allow Josh Allen to do absolutely everything, because while he can, he shouldn't have to, and at times fully relying on him can hurt the team. So if they're able to mix in a balance of an actual run game with the explosiveness of Josh Allen, they'll still be a really good football team. I anticipate seeing them in the playoffs. Number 3, you got the kitty goes meow Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals lost some key pieces in their secondary. Von Bell, Jesse Bates, unfortunately leaving. But they also brought in Orlando Brown. They brought in Nick Scott. And I think the Bengals are still poised to make a run. Joe Burrow's contract is looming. They have some really explosive guys on offense. This may be one of the last years they're able to keep all those key pieces together, just because they're going to have to start paying guys eventually. I really like the Myles Murphy pick. He could have gone in the top 15, so I like that they got a really good edge rusher at the end of the first round. I know it might not have been your biggest need, but they needed to get after the quarterback. So the Bengals, they are in a division which is a little bit weird. We don't know what the Browns are doing. The Steelers, while they had a really, really good draft, there's still some question marks there. And the Ravens, there's some big ifs. So the Bengals are going to be competing to win the AFC North. They should still be a powerhouse in this conference. It's just a matter of, are they going to be meowing deep into the playoffs? Number 2, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. While draft grades mean absolutely nothing until at least 3 years after the draft, yeah, the Eagles, they're early winners because just the amount of potential that they got, the guys that they have, their ceiling is incredible. They get Jalen Carter. On top of that, they basically drafted everybody from Georgia. They got Nolan Smith, who has an incredibly high ceiling. He was the combine darling. And they make that defense, which was already good last year, even better. They lost some pieces, but not as many as I thought they were going to lose, and I still like the way that the Eagles are built. They should have an explosive offense. Hell, even going out and getting DeAndre Swift, if he is healthy, should be really good in that backfield. They should still have one of the better running games in football, and they're in the weaker conference. So the Eagles, I think, are going to be favorites to win the NFC as a whole. It's just going to be a matter of, if they get to the Super Bowl again, can they beat whoever is representing the AFC? And finally, no shocker here, they were the hosts of the 2023 NFL Draft. You got the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, their offseason, a little quieter, lost some guys. They lost Orlando Brown, of course, Frank Clark. But who knows what's going to happen with Frank Clark. He's still a free agent. But their draft, I absolutely love what they were building there. They get King Felix at the end of the first round, which is just a great story. Guy grew up a Chiefs fan, and I think he's a really, really good player. On top of that, they go and address wide receiver, offensive tackle, and you know that the Chiefs are still going to be a good football team. They're in a weaker division, and I know maybe their division rivals get a little bit better this year, but until proven otherwise, the Chiefs are still going to run the AFC West. And it just makes sense. The defense should be around where it was last year, and if King Felix is able to contribute, they'll be on a good roll, but that offense is where it's always going to be. So if Rice is able to become a threat in the passing game, they already have Isaiah Pacheco to cover the ground whenever they want to actually run the ball. But this team is the best team in football until proven otherwise. You have the best quarterback. You have arguably one of the best coaches of all time. You have the best tight end. And so they're able to make magic regardless of what their team is. Hell, they traded away their best wide receiver and won a Super Bowl. I wouldn't be shocked if they did it again. But these are the top 10 that I got listed right now. You got the Chiefs, Eagles, Bengals, Bills, Jets, 49ers, Ravens, Cowboys, Jaguars, and Seahawks. But of course, this is all early. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let's rock. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.